Welcome to the Hidden Corners, where truth and terror collide. Discover a realm where the lines between the living and the supernatural blur, as you embark on a journey to the paranormal and visit the mysterious hidden corners of your mind.
Welcome to the Wolfman Chronicles. This is Chapter 9 of Book 8. Episode 99. Thailand, Magic and Prophecy. The sun hung low in the smoky sky, casting long shadows across the foliage. Tents and camouflage netting had been set up in a clearing far from the main road. This was base camp, silent, isolated, and ready for war. In the makeshift command tent, a dim lantern hung from the roof beam, swaying slightly as the jungle wind rustled the canvas walls. And spread out before them was a large table, overlaid with aerial images, topographical maps, and rough hand-drawn sketches of the Chiang Rai temple compound. Red ink circled key points, watchtowers, supply paths, security checkpoints, and a shrouded inner sanctum at the heart of the temple where Khon Sang Wat was believed to reside. Sang Wat's guards rotate every 5 hours. The third shift, just before sunrise, is the thinnest. The outer perimeter is guarded, and the whole damn place is booby-trapped. But internal movement will be minimal, and that's when we have the best chance of striking, Dara said to the group around the table. She turned to Jack, who stood at her side, stronger now. His posture was straighter, no longer bent to protect the bruised and broken ribs. His eyes were sharper now, a true sign that he was feeling much better, though a haunting stillness simmered beneath the surface. Everyone but Rachel was there. David had agreed to have Rachel stay on the island where she'd be safe, though she protested heavily. But when he offered her a summer job as a concierge and even offered to pay her, she decided it was okay to stay behind. Dara glanced around the room. We'll use the wolf to do what no human team could. Slip through traps, disrupt their rhythm, and shatter their sense of control. If Sang Wat's built his empire on illusion and fear, then it's time he meets something that isn't a trick. Julian nodded. Let him think it's a hallucination, a demon out of folklore. That'll buy us some time. But Jack doesn't need to be alone, right? Isn't a pack of wolves better than a lone wolf? Oh, what do you mean? Dara asked. Julian glanced over at Jack, making sure that it was safe to answer. Jack nodded his head and looked down at the maps. Well, Dara, Jack's not the only werewolf here in the room, Julian answered quietly. What? Dara asked. You've got to be kidding me. This isn't just some anomaly. You mean there's more of you? A whole pack, Julian grinned. Well, that's not entirely true, Miguel replied. I never got the hang of it, but Julian and Jack and even Sasha, they can all transform. Dara looked at Sasha in disbelief. You too? I don't believe this. How many more of your type have this condition? Jack smirked under his breath. Honestly, Dara, we have no idea. None of us asked for this. I was bitten a few years back by a man from Germany who apparently had it in his blood for several generations. And Julian here is from a part of Germany where werewolves are practically commonplace in the gypsy community. Sasha was bitten by an old Russian woman who apparently carries the gene. We haven't run into many others, so we really don't know how many of us there are. Wow, I had no idea your kind even existed outside of fairy tales, Alexei remarked. I'm having a hard time believing this is real. I'd imagine how we feel, Jack laughed. It took a long time to come to terms with this. The room was silent for just a moment. Getting back to the plan, Jack spoke softly, his fingers gliding across the creased map, tracing the path leading to the outer perimeter of the temple. I think the best idea is for me to go in alone. Sort out where the traps are. These guys aren't used to seeing wolves. They're going to think it's just a big dog moving through the underbrush, walking along the trail. But when you hear my howl, and then backup comes in the form of a pack, the shock of seeing us should buy us some time. Well, what if they start shooting as soon as they see you? Sasha asked. Something tells me they won't, Jack replied. Call it a hunch, but I think things are different here in Thailand. Now, if we were in the States, where wolves have caused problems with ranchers for years, I'd be a little more cautious. Now, we've got the shock factor working in our favor here. Besides, as a wolf, my senses are sharper and I have faster reflexes. I can detect the traps, or at least avoid most of them. Their perimeter is meant for humans, and not for us. Natya spoke up. I think we should shadow the flanks with two teams. Miguel and Julian moving from the north ridge where the jungle is much denser. Sasha and I take the western slope. Get eyes on the main staircase. Dara nodded. Sangwat's patterns are precise. He's not reckless, but he's arrogant. He won't expect us to come in under his nose, especially if he's distracted by a creature that he can't explain. In Thailand, there are no wolves. And the largest wild dog species is the Dao, also known as the Asiatic wild dog. Daos are sometimes referred to as mountain wolves or red wolves, but they're pretty distinctly different from the gray wolf. In fact, they look a little more like the rather small dingo. But one thing to remember, the people of Thailand are highly superstitious, and that will work to our favor. When the wolf arrives, he'll believe he's cursed, and when the pack follows, he'll know he's doomed. A hush fell over the room as the plan settled in everyone's mind. The final pieces were in place. 2 more nights, and the hunt would begin. The jungle was alive with sound. Thick fog curled around the underbrush like ghost fingers. The trees towered over Jack, their twisted limbs clawing towards the stars. The only light came from the moon, bright, swollen, and full, bleeding through the canopy in silver streaks. Jack stood alone on a moss-covered ridge, shirtless, his hands clenched at his sides, his boots sunk into the soft, damp earth. Every sound had faded, except the multitude of insects creating a high-pitched chorus in the night. This was sacred ground, and something older than man stirred within him. His breathing slowed, then deepened. The wolf was close. A low tremor rippled through his spine, and he grunted, dropping to one knee as his muscles flexed involuntarily. Crack! It had hurt more than he expected. His ribs, still bruised from his injury, his shoulder jolted as the first shift struck, bones realigning beneath the skin like branches bending in the wind. He clenched his jaw as his back arched, his skin rippled with a sudden sheen of heat. He wondered if he'd be able to stand the pain. Veins pulsed beneath the surface. His pulse thundered in his ears. The wolf wasn't a mask. It was him. Another part of him that still marveled at the ability, the strangeness of it all. Jack fell forward onto all fours, fingers digging into the soil as they began to split and twist, nails darkening into claws. He grunted through his teeth, breath ragged, pain soaring through his body. Snap! His ribs widened. His spine elongated, the outline of his body distorted as fur began to crawl up his arms, dark and coarse, glistening in the moonlight. His jaw unhinged, muzzle pushing forward with a sickening crunch. He didn't scream. He let it happen. And when it was done, he stood still, taller, leaner, massive shoulders sloped beneath a cloak of thick, dark fur. His eyes glowed gold beneath the moon. scanning the shadows with deadly clarity, muscles coiled like springs beneath his sleek, shifting form. He wasn't Jack anymore. He was the wolf. He lifted his snout and sniffed the air. Gun oil, incense, sweat, fear. The temple was close. A growl rumbled in his chest as he turned east, towards a path that led through the underbrush. Invisible to most, but not to him. The traps would be there, the guards, the watchers in the dark. But they wouldn't be ready. Not for him. They didn't believe in monsters of this kind, but they would now. With a sudden fluid motion, he vanished into the trees, his paws silent against the jungle floor, slipping between root and vine like shadow given form. And when the time came, they would hear the howl. Ahead, the temple rose like a shadowed monolith from the jungle, hidden beneath layers of mist and ancient banyan trees. Its stone walls were slick with moss and carved with faded images, some of gods, others of monsters. No tourists came here, no monks remained, only Sangwat's men, dozens of them, armed, paranoid, and deadly. At the western watchtower, a young guard squinted into the tree line, shifting his rifle uneasily. Sweat banded down his temple. A bird screeched high above, and he jumped, visibly startled. A low growl echoed from the darkness. He raised his weapon. "What was that?" he called out. There was no answer, just rustling leaves. But then, movement. Too low to be a man. Maybe a tiger? He stepped back, heart pounding, scanning the perimeter with a high-powered flashlight. Somewhere deeper in the trees, a second guard screamed. Then silence. Nadia, Dara, and Alexei crouched behind a curtain of broad-leafed brush, night goggles in place, rifles at the ready. The radio was silent. The only communication now was hand signals. Jack, in full wolf form, pressed forward, ducking beneath tripwires, leaping over pressure plates. Every inch of his senses was lit like fire. His ears twitched. Someone was near. He scaled a crumbling pier, reached the top of a stone wall, and crouched. Below, he saw the inner courtyard, guards pacing, 2 lanterns burning near the shrine steps, and at the center, a man in white robes stood alone, lighting incense. It was Khon Sangwat, calm and centered. Jack narrowed his glowing eyes. The stench of dark magic was here. Opium, blood, and burnt herbs. A trap? Possibly. Jack drew in a deep breath, raised his head towards the sky, and howled. The sound tore across the jungle like a sword blade of wind, a long, primal, soul-shaken howl that echoed off of stone and trees, reaching into the marrow of anyone within earshot. Birds scattered from the treetops. Monkeys wailed in the distance. And deep beneath the jungle canopy, even the insects fell silent. From his perch atop the temple wall, Jack watched. Below, bathed in flickering torchlight, Khon Sangwat stood in stark white robes, one hand still raised above the incense burner. He flinched, but not much. He showed no fear. He didn't run or scream. Instead, Sangwat turned slowly, his head lifting until his dark, sunken eyes locked onto the shadow wall above. He was looking directly at Jack, even though the wolf crouched in near total darkness, camouflaged by the stone and the trees. Yet somehow he saw him, and he smiled. It was not a frightened smile. It wasn't even a surprised smile. It was mocking. Jack's lips curled into a snarl. He dropped from the wall into the shadows, gone in the blink of an eye. Something was wrong. Sang Wat had showed no fear, no surprise. Jack stopped beneath a low, twisted banyan tree, chest rising, eyes glowing. He could feel it now, like the low hum of a predator calling from below the earth. Sang Wat hadn't been caught off guard. He had invited the wolf. Deep within the temple, candlelit halls stretched into darkness. Robed figures, acolytes with blindfolds and rusted knives, began chanting in an old tongue. Their voices rose and fell in guttural waves. In the center of the chamber, a circle had been drawn in ash and blood. Sang Wat descended the stone stairs, steps slow and deliberate. He knew the wolf would follow. Behind him, two armed men carried something between them, a cage covered in black cloth. Inside, something shifted, something alive. Sang Wat placed a hand on the cloth and whispered, "Let him think he is the only monster here." 20 years earlier, Sang Wat, younger but just as cold and evil, knelt in a dusty chamber lit only by oil lamps. He held a tattered manuscript in his hands, written in a combination of Sanskrit and Thai. Across from him sat a man with hollow cheeks and amber eyes, a monk, long since cast out from his temple for teachings deemed heretical. "You understand, then," the monk said, voice gravel thin, "that to summon the beast, one must first believe in the myth." Sang Wat's gaze never wavered. "I believe." The monk chuckled. "Fools control men. The wise unleash monsters on their enemies." Sang Wat unfolded an old illustration. Half wolf, half man, eyes blazing like suns. Beneath it the scrawl, "He who walks between blood and breath shall be the harbinger of the end of empires." The monk leaned closer. "One day you'll be strong enough, wise enough, to call the wolf to you. And when he comes, the empire will truly be yours." Jack, still in wolf form, crept along the stone passages, littered with bones, not human, but animal, offerings, sacrifices, symbols of ancient power long buried. He paused. His ears twitched. He could hear chimes and whispering. His golden eyes scanned the shadows, then caught a flicker of a figure behind a wooden screen. Too small for a guard, pale skin, wide eyes. It was a girl. He stepped forward slowly, but when he blinked, she was gone, and the screen behind her had become a mirror, cracked, but whole enough to reflect himself, the wolf. He growled low, unsettled, because in the reflection, something stood behind him, beckoning him to follow. Jack descended stone steps that spiraled deeper into the earth, the walls slick with condensation and the air growing colder and heavier. The chants above had faded. Here it was deathly silent, except for the slow, rhythmic drip of water. Or was it blood? The scent grew stronger. Not just incense, not just rot, something not quite human. He emerged into a vast chamber carved out centuries ago, a place meant to stay buried. Torch sconces burned with blue flame. Symbols were etched into the ground with ash, blood, and bone, forming a massive, jagged circle. And at the center, a cage. Thick iron bars reinforced with ancient gold bands and inlaid with script that even Jack's wolf senses couldn't comprehend. Chains snaked outward like spider legs bolted into the floor. The cage pulsed faintly, as though breathing. Jack growled. From the shadows behind a cracked pillar, Sang Wat stepped forward. He had shed his white robes. Now he wore black, form-fitting, ceremonial, embroidered with dragon scales and faded runes. His hands were gloved, around his neck with a talisman carved from what looks like human bone. He looked at Jack with something closer to reverence than fear. You came, as the scrolls said you would. Jack's lips curled into a snarl. His claws scraped the floor, but he didn't pounce, not yet. Sang-Wat raised a hand, not to attack, but to show control. I've studied your kind for decades. The legends say the wolf walks between the worlds, between curse and gift, between man and God. I've summoned you here to see if the prophecy is true. Jack lowered his head, his muscles coiled. His breath came hot and thick from his nostrils. This was not what he was expecting. A chill crawled up his spine. He turned, just as a sound echoed behind him. From inside the cage, two pale hands gripped the floor, elongated fingers, sharp nails, thin as bone and trembling with rage. Sang-Wat raised his arms and whispered an invocation. The cage door unlocked, and the creature emerged. It slithered on all fours at first, then rose, towering and twisted, mouth hanging open in a silent scream. Its eyes, milky but glowing faintly red, locked on Jack. And it charged. Jack met it halfway with a deafening snarl, his claws tearing across the floor as he lunged, teeth flashing. The impact was explosive. Stones cracked, sparks flew. The two beasts collided in a storm of limbs and fury, claws slashing, jaws snapping. But something was wrong. The creature didn't bleed. It didn't stop. It was bound to the magic of this place, held together by hate and ritual. Jack was fighting not just a monster, but a curse given form. The kind of evil spirit that can only exist in places such as Thailand. This was unlike anything Jack had ever encountered. This was a fabrication of madness and magic. A thing held together by willpower and belief. It wasn't real. It was not of flesh and bone. The creature's jaws opened wide, unhinged and howling, revealing a throat burned black with ritual scars. Its claws raked across Jack's flank, tearing through fur and flesh. Jack yelped and spun, slamming the creature with the full force of his shoulder, sending it skidding across the stone floor. But it didn't stay down. It rolled and it launched back at him like a shadow on fire. Jack leapt, landing on top of it, sinking his fangs into the creature's collarbone, but it didn't bleed. Instead, ash poured from the wound, sizzling against the ground. It shrieked, not in pain, but in fury. Its arms coiled around Jack like snakes, holding him in place as its jagged teeth sank into his side. Jack roared and twisted violently, slamming it into a stone pillar, cracking the ancient support in two. Chunks of granite fell as dust and rubble filled the chamber. They were both breathing hard now. Even the monster, whatever it was, seemed to tire. Jack backed up, circling, his golden eyes never leaving it. The wolf inside of him was raging, desperate to kill. But something deeper stirred. Not fear, recognition. This wasn't just a monster. This was a creation, and Sang-Wat had made it to test him. Across the room, Sang-Wat smiled, unfazed by the carnage, unblinking. His voice came in a whisper. You came, just as I was told you would. Just as the old books said. The wolf walks when the moon is full and the temple is open, and the sins of men call him from the veil. Jack's body trembled. Not from fear or injury, but from the sheer force of disbelief. Sang-Wat had built an empire on trafficking, manipulation, dark magic, and he had done it waiting for Jack, for the wolf. Not as an enemy, but as a messiah. Sang-Wat truly believed he had conjured Jack from the abyss and summoned him. Jack blinked, and the horror of it hit him. He thinks I'm the prophecy. He actually thinks he created me. Boom! The ancient door to the inner sanctum flew open with a splintering crack as the infiltration team burst through. They were all here. Nadia, Dara, and Alexei, followed by Miguel, Julian, and Sasha. Smoke billowed out, thick and acrid, curling around their bodies as they entered, weapons raised, eyes scanning every corner. "Where is he?" Dara yelled, but there was no creature. No sang what, only Jack, crouching alone in the center of the sanctum, surrounded by the shattered remains of burnt symbols. His chest rose and fell and labored, his skin marked with fresh wounds and old scars, his half-shifted body steaming in the strange humidity. The demon that he had fought was gone. The cage lay twisted and empty, its iron bars bent outward. "Where the hell is he?" Dara yelled again. Jack slowly turned to look at her. His eyes, still touched with gold, scanned the room like he didn't believe it either. He turned and slowly left the room. This was his first failure, and he didn't know how to handle it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode, and I hope you'll join us next week for another installment of the Wolfman Chronicles. And until then, have a great week, everyone.